The Queen is dead. That was probably the most intense news report of the last year. And hardly any death has caused so much attention worldwide like the one from Queen Elizabeth. But while you know everything about her burial and the time after her death, hardly anything is known about her exact circumstances of death, and only a few know how the last hours of the Queen went. But what happened behind the palace walls when her fate came to an end? In this video, we want to give an insight into the last days and the final hours in the life of Queen Elizabeth. So let's get started right away. The year 2022 was supposed to be a very special year for the Queen because in February her 70th throne anniversary actually took place. But it didn't start well at the beginning. Queen Elizabeth got sick right away in February with COVID, which was of course particularly dangerous in her old age. In addition, she also suffered from the loss of her husband Prince Philip, who died in June 2021 and with whom she was married for an incredible 73 years. The fact that she was severely ill should also be shown in the following months, because in fact the Queen had to cancel important public appearances again and again. When she opened a hospice in the summer, she looked happy, but also made a rather fragile impression. And even the opening speech for the new session period of the British Parliament could not keep her for the first time in 60 years. According to the British author Kyle Bandit, who wrote a book about the Queen, the monarchs should have suffered from bone cancer all year round. However, there is no proof of this. As you can see, the English Queen had to drag herself through the year. She was still able to celebrate her throne anniversary in June 2022 and even play Paddington Bear in a short film shot in her honor. However, it was probably foreseeable for her that her time should soon end. So let's fast forward to September 6, 2022, 2 days before the Queen's death. Although she was not doing well, the English Queen, as her people were used to her, was still committed and took on an extremely important task for her country. She dismissed the then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, and appointed Liz Truss as her successor. This meeting with Liz Truss was supposed to be her last public appearance ever. It was unusual that she did not receive Liz Truss at Buckingham Palace, but at her castle Balmoral. This was the summer residence in Scotland, on which she had retreated before her death, and where a team of doctors and nurses took care of her. A cell phone photo from those days shows the 96-year-old smiling with sunglasses and a coat sitting on a chair. Although Queen Elizabeth was very sick at that time, she tried not to let anything be noticed in her professional way. And so she actually looked fit and cheerful for her old age in front of the cameras during the appointment. Only a dark skin discoloration on her right hand worried observers when the image and video material of the last official court case of the Queen went around the world. However, this should not change drastically even 2 days later. As the first person outside the palace, the newly appointed Prime Minister Liz Truss found out how serious the situation really is. When she was giving a speech in front of Parliament on the 8th of September noon, a note was put in front of her and she then left the House of Representatives without anyone knowing what was going on. At 12:30, the Royal House then published a statement in which it was said that the doctors of Queen Elizabeth were concerned about her health condition. Shortly afterwards, Liz Truss also tweeted that the whole country was deeply concerned. But what exactly had happened at Balmoral Palace? As it became known later, the condition of the Queen, who was actually quite healthy the day before, changed almost instantly. Although she enjoyed a big dinner with acquaintances the evening before and even joked about it, she had to be brought to the hospital within minutes at midnight, which was built especially for her in the palace. A team of specialists then watched her all night and checked all her vital signs. However, after her oxygen saturation in the blood began to drop, the news spread quickly, especially within the royal family, that the Queen was unlikely to survive for much longer. And so the closest relatives of the Queen were gradually asked to go to Scotland. Their son Charles or their grandson William left everything standing and lying right in the morning and flew with private jets and helicopters to Balmoral Palace, where the Queen was now hardly accessible. As this information gradually spread, it became clear to the people that the health condition of their beloved Queen was really dramatic. Because even Prince Harry, who was already quite unpopular in the royal family at that time, who was just at a charity event in London, was traveling to Scotland. Although it was cold in London on this September day and it was raining again and again, until about 4 p.m. more and more people gathered in sorrow in front of Buckingham Palace. Of course, they still hoped that everything would be fine again. But many in the crowd seemed to be aware that they would soon have to say goodbye to their queen. While large numbers of people were waiting in the rain in front of the palace in England and still hoping for the best, the physicians slowly realized that the queen was just taking her last breaths. On the other hand, her values were so bad just before 3 p.m. that her death was practically just a matter of time. But as was later explained, it was a 12-hour fight for the queen, but she should have remained quite peaceful throughout. On September 8th at exactly 3 p.m. local time, her heart beat one last time, until it finally closed its eyes forever. On her death certificate, age weakness was included as the official cause of death, which means that the main cause was not a serious illness. At 4 p.m., Liz Truss was once again informed as the first person outside the palace of the Queen's death. 2 hours later, the royal family also informed the public. Since his arrival at 10:30 a.m., Prince Charles, by the way, with some close family members, had woken up on his mother's bed. Her grandchildren Harry and William could no longer make it to Scotland in time to say goodbye to their grandmother. Immediately after the publication of this sad news, the flags at Buckingham Palace were put up at half-mast and the people waiting in line could hardly believe that they had really lost the only queen they ever knew. Many people immediately burst into tears and the news of the 96-year-old's death quickly went around the world, where it shocked millions of people. Here you can see, for example, how the crew of an airplane experiences the death of the Queen live during a flight and spontaneously can only weep. The British Parliament, which was in the middle of a debate when it learned of the death of the Queen, was completely shocked. In retrospect, of course, there was nothing more to think about than a normal continuation of the debate. All over the world, whether in Italy or the distant USA, TV broadcasts were immediately interrupted and all TV and radio stations reported the death of the Queen. The German Daily Show also began directly after the welcome with this sad news. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the Daily Show. Queen Elizabeth II is dead. Please write us in the comments what you were doing when you heard about the death of the Queen. We are curious. After her death, the Queen was accompanied by a ceremonial procession in her coffin to the Westminster Palace, the seat of the English Parliament, and was buried there for several days. So the British people had the opportunity to say goodbye to their beloved Queen, and an incredible 250,000 people took advantage of this. On September 19th, her funeral followed. Of course, the Queen received a huge ceremonial state funeral with a great service of mourning and guests from all over the world. After that, the Queen was brought along with a procession to some of the most important points of London in her coffin before she was finally buried forever. With Queen Elizabeth, not only one of her people's most popular monarchs died, but a whole era was felt. As her successor, her son Charles now stepped into her great footsteps. But whether he can really keep this huge legacy remains to be seen. That was it with our video. We'll see you next time here at Wikivedia Plus.